Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. In this episode, we kick off Post-Apocalyptic Month with a look at Mad Max Fury Road. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead.
Oh, what a day. What a beautiful day for a podcast. And you guys are all back here with me and Sweet Tea.
Yes.
And this episode we'll be reviewing one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. This is one of those movies I know you hadn't seen.
Right, yeah.
And I've been kind of, frothing to get you to see it. But before we even talk about the movie, I mentioned before the show I wanted to bring this up just because it's very funny. So a little anecdote before we start the review for any of our listeners. One thing that has happened since we last recorded, we put up our anime reviews, and we're on a bunch of different platforms and everything, and T and I noticed that for some reason on our YouTube channel, Paprika was doing really well, which is especially unusual because most of you guys are not listening on YouTube. So we were just like, what is going on? So T, will you explain why our Paprika episode blew up on YouTube?
So I'm over here, I'm going through, I was texting you at the time, and I was like, you were like, did you check? I'm like, oh, let me get my computer, let me check what's going on. Okay, I'm looking through analytics, and finally, it's one that had so many views that actually had analytics. And I was looking, I'm like, I don't know, it looks like people are just intrigued by Paprika, I guess. I don't know. And I'm looking, and I finally find a section that's like how they came about finding you. And it's like search terms. Everybody found it by search, and so it looks up search terms that they found you by. And I'm like, and it's like, okay, top one was Tinto Brass. And then there was Paprika, Tinto Brass, 1991 Paprika, 1991 Paprika. I'm like, what is this? So I looked this up, and apparently it is an erotic Italian film that was produced in 1991 that was, I guess, a big enough hit that they even went later and made a full-on pornographic version of it. So... I was like, this is why it's blowing up, because everybody's thinking it's this movie. And
so to anyone listening on YouTube, I hate to break it to you, but they don't have porn on YouTube. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know why you're searching. And who knows, like, if you discovered the show because you clicked on that video thinking we were going to be talking about that film, hi, and, welcome back if you decide to keep listening. Maybe we'll look at it in the future. We've talked about, like, if we got enough of a following, doing a Patreon, and you are able to kind of talk about, or even, like, if you're a movie review thing, show, like, clips and whatever of, like, more lewd stuff. So I'd be open to it. I'd never heard of this movie. Like, when I asked you and you were like, who's Tinto Brass or whatever? And I'm like, I don't know.
I thought you would know of anybody.
You would think I would, because I like weirdo art house stuff. And I was like, I don't know. But I just think it's fun because, again, like we talked about it in the review, like Paprika, it bombed when it came out, but it's kind of within the anime space looked at as a classic. I'm more surprised that people aren't searching for that Paprika than the erotic one. Like, that was what blew my mind. Not so much that it was an accident that people found our show, but that more people are looking for some weird 1991 erotic Italian movie called Paprika than the, super, like, well-known anime film from, like, only a little over a decade ago. It was just, it was a very funny thing. And I felt that we needed to talk about it on the show because it is incredibly funny, and it just boggles my mind. Like, as we are talking, there's probably more people finding our show through that, and I'm just like, why are there so many people on YouTube looking for smut?
I know, you asked me that in a text message, and I think my response was, I don't know, probably old men in raincoats. I don't know.
I guess so. Again, it's like it's the sort of thing you'd imagine like a 12-year-old to do, but I'm pretty sure 12-year-olds are not looking for Tinto Brass 1991 erotic
art house film.
Like art house films. So anyway, we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road. I mentioned way back in our Die Hard review, I mentioned there's like a couple films I consider to be like the platinum grade action movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd covered pretty much, and I'm sure there's some other ones I'm just forgetting, but like right at the top of my head, it was Die Hard, Terminator 2, and then this film. And this was one, as I said, I know you hadn't seen before,
right.
Despite it being kind of a big deal when it came out. Like 7 years ago? That's blowing my mind. It does not feel like it was that long ago.
You want to feel old? I was interning when this came out.
So was I.
No, you weren't. We weren't in the same class.
No, this came out in 2015. You silly goose. You hadn't started interning, I don't think. Yeah, this came out May 15th, 2015. It was technically a summer release.
So I'm so confused
but
because I
before
remember
I get
the billboards for it and everything in LA.
So I have an explanation as to why that might be, but before I get into all the data stuff, we'll get into what we're drinking. So because both of our films, for I say month, but with how things have been going, who knows if this will just be our summer movies.
We'll call it our grouping for this grouping.
For this pair of films, I'm going with a tequila theme because both of these films are somewhat they are post-apocalyptic, and what's more post-apocalyptic than tequila? It certainly feels like the world.
All the Mexicans in the audience are just upset at you now, myself included.
Oh, I'm not saying because it's bad. I'm saying because this tequila is what you drink when you're about to how did he put it? When you're going to be
blowing stuff up.
I'm trying to remember. There's a line the guy said, and I think I actually wrote it down.
This
Die remembered on the Fury Road. I didn't write it down, and I'm mad at myself because it was that's a whole thing I'm going to get into. But so anyway, tequila is my theme for these next two films, and I also color-coded it. Supposedly, by the time these come out, our Instagram should have launched. I think in our last two episodes we mentioned it. Still haven't gotten onto it, but you guys know us by now. We're always late at everything. So, because of the color scheme of this film, I actually decided to go with a tequila sunrise because the orange and pink kind of matches the color tone of a lot of the scenes in this film.
Right.
And as I said, the tequila is what you're going to drink before you head to Gastown. So what are you drinking, T?
So I went with the theme of cars and ran with it. I'm having a cocktail called Gasoline.
Ooh.
It's not colorful. It literally looks colorless, like I guess gasoline does. I've never stopped to look myself.
You never had a little gas? Never had a little sip at the pump?
Apparently I'm missing out. I hear, well, from what I saw in the movie, I guess it's normal for them to drink it and they just spit it out again. But
there's a My Strange Addiction with a girl who's drinking gasoline, and I was just like, how is she not dead?
I think I saw that one, or at least parts of it. So this is a super simple cocktail. It's just tequila. I used Patron for this, and it calls for peach liqueur. So then I got some peach schnapps and put that in here, and it's really kind of tasty. I guess I feel like it gives me some fuel, so maybe it's doing what it's supposed to. But there you go, gasoline.
Oh, and also I even though no one pays us anything, like I like to shout out whichever alcohol I'm using. So I'm doing an añejo. I don't know if that's wrong for a tequila sunrise, but whatever. It's the one I picked up. But it's Centenario is the tequila brand I went with for honestly both of my cocktails for this pairing because quite frankly I don't drink very much outside of this show. So it'll last me for the next two recordings.
Biggest lie of 2022.
Patron's a good choice. You're definitely making me look like the poor one here, but my name's whiskey.
Well,
okay. All, right?
Well, you know what? It's Patron and then whatever the bargain peach schnapps at the liquor store was. So.
All right, Pitbull. Oh man, I've only had a few sips, but I'm sure this is gonna hit me like one of those fire bombs in the movie. But anyway, so Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
This came out in May 15th, 2015. obviously, I'm sure you know without me getting into the money, dear listeners, this was a massive, stupid, successful hit.
Right,
Its
right.
budget was really high, actually, and I'll get into this with the history of Mad Max, but the budget was super high for a Mad Max movie. 150 million, grossed 375 million worldwide, and it was filmed in the Namib Desert, Namibia.
Yeah.
Um, Right? I actually thought so. Like all of the previous movies were filmed in Australia, and I thought that they had done that before. Fun fact, and this was kind of going around when the movie came out, but it at the time they were filming this movie was in development hell for like years.
Okay.
He wrote this like in the 90s. He wrote several Mad Max movies in the 90s, but like for several reasons, it was just they were having trouble getting it made. And even close to like when they started shooting, there had actually been an unprecedented amount of rain in the desert, which again I thought was Australia, but it turns out it's in Namibia. Or maybe they decided to go to Namibia because of this. But anyway, there was a lot of rain, and the place they were going to film was like super green, which wouldn't work considering the setting they were going for.
Well, I actually have an answer for that for you. I actually do know that is why they moved filming to Namibia. Namibia.
It was a good choice.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks fabulous. But it was supposed to be filmed in Australia.
Yeah, and we'll get again, like kind of like with the what I said about the budget. We'll get into my history with the Mad Max franchise, but I think it was a good choice, honestly, because the other Mad Max films look kind of visually bland, and I feel like maybe that has something to do, obviously, with the upgraded budget and the new technology and everything. But I think filming in a much more remote location probably helped it look a lot more apocalyptic, because in the other Mad Max films, they're in a desert, but it's just, it looks like a desert. And there's actually a paved road in some of the movies, so that kind of ruins a little bit of the... But,
well, did you hear that? Did you hear that, listeners? Two things. One, Whiskey has a history with Mad Max, not surprised. And then two, he said Australia's bland. So take that as you will.
Well, I don't. That's kind of the history. The history I'm getting into, and I'll just why not say this now? I'll get into like this. This is a very beloved kind of nerdy thing. Like it started out. How much do you know about Mad Max? We'll get into your opinion.
So if you were to take nothing, I know less than that. Like, this was when this came out, and this was a huge deal, this was my first time hearing about Mad Max.
Yeah, so, and I'm not surprised, because I had a feeling you had never seen any of the other movies. Although you'll be happy to know Mad Max 3 has Tina Turner as the villain, so it's got that going for it.
And it had that hit song from it, We Don't Need Another Hero, or something like that. Was like a hit song.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, she honestly, I haven't seen Thunderdome, but she looks cool. Like, and it was kind of, I think it's a little refreshing to have a warlord that's a woman instead of another. Anyway, but so like the thing is with Mad Max, like we talked about this in a number of episodes in the past, but one thing that always used to grind my gears in the late 2000s and early 2010s was the quote unquote indie movie, and I brought this up mostly in our 500 Days of Summer video, because like in that time frame, the indie movie, with, you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, was essentially like some airy-fairy romantic comedy with like, people in their mid-20s bonding over obscure music, and like it was like it became like a misnomer, like a genre in and of itself. Like if you were talking about an indie movie, you were talking about this type of film.
Right.
But the term indie film has no genre. Like if it is made independently, that is what an indie movie is. And that used to just annoy the crap out of me, because people would just use that for like, oh, hey, this multi-million-dollar feature from Time Warner is an indie movie because no, it isn't. It's got a massive budget. Like, and it could be, if it was, one other franchise I was thinking of reviewing with you in the future is the Before Sunrise series, and that kind of fits into that bubble that people were putting indie movies in, but it actually was an independent movie. We talked about Friday the 13th in a past review. That's technically an indie movie because it was made on a shoestring budget in a, campground in the middle of nowhere with, just a stuntman and a Halloween mask.
Right.
So that, and Mad Max was an indie movie. So this was George Miller's, like, back in the 70s, he made this for no money. Um, and it's kind of interesting to see the evolution of the series, because the first movie, I feel like most Mad Max fans would say is kind of the most boring one, because a lot of the ideas haven't really been fleshed out. But it's a good origin story, that you don't need to have seen to watch any of the other movies. Max is, like, still a police officer, and it's kind of like about how some thugs, track down and kill his wife and kid, and it makes him kind of lose it and take revenge on them, and then he leaves the force to go out and be like a justice bringer on the road. And then in the future installments, it's like the world is officially ended, and Max is still just kind of going around and honestly, he's not even usually a heroic character. He just kind of stumbles into things. And that was something when this movie came out I thought was really funny. It was a lot of people who thought they were smart were saying, like, Max isn't even the main character. It's really about Furiosa. And it's like, have you seen any Mad Max film? Max is never the main character. Like, he's the vessel to get you into the story. And he is more of an anti-hero. Like, he involves himself in the plot for his own means, and he's usually helping out the good guys, but he's never really the focal point of the story, and besides the first movie.
And he's not like really there for his from what I gather, for the good of the cause or whatever. He's there to basically he's basically just there because he's just to get out of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you noticed in this movie, like, for the first half of the movie, any opportunity he's just trying to get away. Like, right. He was not going to, feel bad about leaving Furiosa and the girls to, like, be left behind. Or, he's just like, I'm taking the rig and I'm getting the hell out of here. And that's kind of how he is in all the movies. I haven't seen Thunderdome. I know, like, that one involves, like, a bunch of, like, orphan kids or something. I haven't seen it, so maybe that'll be in the future. But yeah, that's, like, a thing. And that's also kind of the great thing about this series is you could watch all of these movies out of order. It really doesn't matter. Like, as Max's backstory is just very simple. Like, he used to be a police officer. He lost everything, and now he's just kind of surviving. And that's it, and that's kind of where he gets his name, is he's gone as mad as the world is gone or whatever. But I kind of equate it to, like, Indiana Jones, where it's like, it's just this archetypal character in a scenario, and that's what the movie is. And just like Indiana Jones, you could watch those movies out of order and not really be lost.
Right.
Maybe the fourth one is an exception because there's some ties to the first movie with his love interest and having a son and stuff.
Oh my god, yeah, but we pretend
it's like a different kind of sequel you don't see as often. Is just the character in a different scenario.
Yeah, but most people pretend the fourth one doesn't exist.
Right. And they're trying to make a fifth one with Harrison Ford being like 120 years old, so that's like it's like a whole thing. But yeah, so the history I was talking about is, like, this is a film that is beloved in, like, nerdy circles, like the types of people who like to cosplay and stuff. Like, this is kind of on the same level as, like, Star Wars. It's also very influential. A lot of, like, films that do post-apocalyptic stuff.
Right.
They got it from Mad Max. In the 80s, there were a lot of Mad Max ripoffs. It's like, oh, this is Mad Max in space. Waterworld, Universal's famous flop from, like, the 90s. That was Mad Max on the ocean.
I like Waterworld.
I like it. I don't think it's that, like, honestly, maybe we'll talk about that one in the future. I don't think it should be as hated. I don't even think it is as hated. I think most people are just meh with it, but that's one that was literally a Mad Max ripoff. It's Mad Max, but
it's like Mad Max on water.
So this is a very influential, independently produced film by George Miller back, in the 70s. And I've always wanted to like it, but I could never really get into it. Like, the first one I saw was Road Warrior, and I only recently saw the first Mad Max during quarantine because it was on Netflix, and I'm like, I should probably see this, even though everyone says it's the worst one because it's really boring. And it is. In case anyone wonders, it's not really necessary. But, like, with the Road Warrior, it's most people, I'd say now Fury Road is probably most people's favorite one, but the Road Warrior before this movie came out was the favorite. And I just couldn't get into it because it kind of, it's not because it's bad, it's because the budgetary constraints made it hard for the action to be engaging for me.
Right.
The
Okay.
car chases and stuff, it's like you just have like, scrap nailed to like stunt cars, and they're just driving on like some paved road out in the outback in Australia.
Yeah.
And the costumes and stuff were really inventive, but the thing that made me really love this movie is that George Miller, they finally gave him a ton of money, because now it is super visually striking. It is so awesome. Like, even if, and the story isn't really particularly deep or like insightful or interesting, although we will get into one thing I think is kind of cool about us, well, not in a happy way talking about it now, but the story is not really very complicated.
Mhm.
And it's just the action's so dynamic, it really gets you into it. And when I knew this was coming up, I was really excited, partly to hear your opinion on it, which we will get into after. The last thing I wanted to talk about with the reception of this film was that it was a big award winner. I don't know if you will remember the Oscars in 2016, but this one was nominated for everything, including Best Picture and Best Director. And I was probably, I think my pick that year was probably The Big Short for Best Picture, but I was like, if this wins, that would be really freaking cool, because this is like kind of a crowd-pleasing movie. It's not the sort of thing you would imagine the Academy to really get behind.
Right.
But it did win 6 Oscars, including basically all of your favorite categories. It won Best Editing, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Sound Mixing, Best Editing, and Best Production Design.
Wow.
Right? So with all of that said, and with all of that backstory, what did you think of the film, T?
What do you think I felt about the film?
I don't know. I was hoping that you would like it, especially with the story that it ends up telling, which took a lot of people by surprise with it being a Mad Max film. So I was predicting that you might be surprised in liking it. Was I correct in that prediction?
So I will say it is definitely a film. No, I'm just kidding. I love this. You have no idea how much I love this movie. I was sitting
I'm
there.
glad you liked it.
I was engaged from the very beginning to the very end.
And I'm sure any fans of our show will know that post-apocalyptic things are not your bag,
right?
To the point where it actually makes you anxious. So the fact that you liked it that much is actually a massive compliment to the film, because it's what makes it's hard for you to watch like zombie movies and stuff. Is like when the world has ended, it bums you out so much. So that's actually a massive compliment.
And I think one of the reasons why is because they did such a good job of essentially creating a whole new world that it didn't even feel like it was Earth in the future. They created a whole brand new, there wasn't anything for you to get anxious or sad about, because it almost felt like another planet.
Right?
But
I think another strength.
I love this. You have no idea how much I love this movie. I cannot wait to watch it again.
And the other great timing is that Furiosa right now is being filmed. So the prequel movie is in the works. Like they're currently wherever they are filming it. And I forgot who is playing young Furiosa, but I know the Warlord guy. I literally saw this 4 days ago. How am I blanking on his name? It's Lord Humongous. No, that's from Road Warrior. Immortan Joe. Immortan Joe is being played by Chris Hemsworth. Okay. So that's going to be interesting to see a young version. But yeah, you'll be excited for that to come out.
I loved everybody in this movie. All the characters were interesting. They were unique. They were different. They spoke in a normal way, and I love that. I didn't feel like it didn't feel like it was trying to be pretentious. I love the fact that it had a fabulous sort of alignment, I guess is what I'm trying to say, without it being preachy or that being the point of the movie. It was just such a natural just film, and I even said this is like the type of movie that movie theaters were made for. It was this kind of movie. It wasn't like a movie that was trying to make you feel anything or trying to what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't trying to educate you about something or get you to believe in something. It was just it was there to, it did what a good movie should. It got you to think about the world without asking you to think about the world. It was so good. You have no idea. I was very excited about this movie after.
Well, one thing I think, and this is kind of the same thing with all of the previous Mad Maxes that I think is really smart, is that like you mentioned how they don't really like get hung up on how the world ended.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this, they never explain it. In even the first Mad Max movie, it's very vague. Something happened. Like, they, in this film, in the opening bit before the credits, like, they kind of allude to maybe a nuclear war.
Yeah.
In earlier films, they talk about a gas crisis. Like, one thing I think is very smart is that they never say precisely what happened.
Right.
It's just everything went to hell. And that's actually one of my favorite quotes from one of the breeding girls in this is like she asks the guy, like, then who killed the world? And the way she's like, you mentioned the way the characters talk, and it's almost kind of it's almost like dumbed down, but not in a way that like people are like cave people or something. It's almost kind of like grown up children talking, like calling someone a people eater and stuff like that. It's very like primitive, I guess is the best way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it's primitive, and that makes sense with their setting.
But and it goes with that line too, like who killed the world, not how did the world end or something. Who killed the world? I don't know. I wrote down like a couple of lines I really liked, and that was one that stuck out.
That's almost smart, not having, because then you don't pigeonhole yourself.
Exactly, and also this
where everybody's alliances are or everything. You can basically move to a new area, and this is what this group's series of problems are. None of it has to be tied together.
And the other smart thing about keeping it vague is it's like you really don't know what kind of crises are going to happen in the future. This is a series, I think the first Mad Max came out in like 1977 or something like that. It was like the late 70s. So the fact that they were smart enough to not really explain, and it still feels like this is a future that could potentially happen. Right. Because they don't explain, like, oh, it's a gas crisis, it's a nuclear war, it's a whatever. Like, I think it's smart because it's like, no matter how much time passes, it's still something that could potentially be in the future, but without dating themselves.
Well, like in this movie, they kind of allude to there being a climate crisis because they talk about the water being sour or
exactly,
and so stuff like that. And so it kind of draws on the ideas of the time it comes out without making that canon or anything like that, because they could have had a gas crisis, but this area was fine, and then the climate changed there, now they're not fine, stuff like that.
Exactly. And I definitely, like, this was 2015, so that was still like a big talking point, and I mean that's kind of the thing with all of the Mad Max movies. It's like in a desert, so climate wasn't like a big talking point in like the 80s really, but it makes sense, like there's no food. I'm sure, like, the very beginning of this movie when he, that cute little lizard walks up to him and he eats it. Like, there's a similar thing in The Road Warrior where him and, like, a raider are fighting over a can of dog food. It's so grim and disgusting, but just, like, funny at the same time that everyone's so desperate for food that this, like, canned dog food is something that two grown men are like, it's a treat for them to eat it.
But you know what I liked about that scene is it gave me some expectations for the movie. Basic, and this is one of the things I really liked about this movie, is essentially his character, he steps on things, but he eats it. He doesn't just waste it. He's not just stepping on it to be mean. One, that tells me about his character, and two, that kind of tells me about the direction the film's going to be in, is there is no violence or killing that's not necessary. Which I really like that. And
at least with the good guys.
Well, but basically everything that happens makes sense. It's not just, okay, now we're just going to have, just a random massacre scene because we need to advance the plot or something. Nothing.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
That's kind of one of the things, I've talked about this with other movies we've reviewed, but this is another one where I would call it, quote unquote, technically perfect. And one of the ways it is that there's no fat really to be trimmed. There's no wasted scenes. Yeah. There's no, like, unnecessary crap going on. Like everything that happens in the movie, it's perfectly paced and timed. There's not like a scene where it's like, oh, this goes on too long, or like, why are we talking about this or something. It is literally like there is nothing you could add or take away from this movie that is like unnecessary or necessary.
Right.
And every time I see it, it really blows my mind, because it's exactly like, I think it's like 2 hours and a minute. And every time I see this, I am amazed at how quickly everything goes by. Like, I think when I was watching it for this review, it's like I had to like go to the bathroom or something, and I pause and I'm like, whoa, I'm already halfway through? That's crazy. You know, but that's kind of the good sign of like a movie. Like, another one that I'd bring up is like how the Lord of the Rings movies are nearly like 3 hours long, but you never feel like they're going on too long.
Right, and everything except everything this movie has a purpose. Even the dialogue. There's no long-winded, conversations, or okay, well, I guess we could cut this line here, or did they need to say that? Everything is very taut. It's very good. It's like it was perfectly edited. This is a movie that was essentially, like you said, essentially perfect. But what I love about this movie is that it's essentially like we call it perfect, but it's also a pop culture movie. And what I like about this is it kind of brings home one of these points I was trying to make, is that just because something's a popular movie or popular, property or something like that, doesn't mean it's going to be lowbrow and bad. And a lot of people don't seem to realize that. And that's one thing I like about this movie, is a lot of people, I'm so happy the Academy recognized it as far as it did, because it basically, what's the word I'm looking for? It legitimizes this genre of filmmaking. Yes.
By the way, do you know anything about the director George Miller?
No. Oh my God. Are you going to ruin my day and tell me he was creepy?
No. I think you're going to like him more. Well, first off, I found it funny. When this movie came out, he just said, like, people were like, oh, what's the movie about? And he's like, it's a 2-hour car chase.
I mean, he's not wrong.
When you talk about, like, because that's the thing, like, we're the unpretentious movie review show, and you don't really get any less pretentious than George Miller. Like, just straight up, like, there's stuff going on in it, but it's a 2-hour car chase, and he's not wrong.
He isn't wrong.
Technically is. But no, he's a really cool guy, and he has had a hand in a lot of movies I bet you wouldn't have expected. So Mad Max is his baby. It was what put him on the map. He's very old. He was born in 1945. He was in his 70s when he was directing this.
Oh my God.
But besides all of the Mad Max films, other movies you might have heard of, he directed The Witches of Eastwick. That was like, I think in the 80s.
Yeah.
He wrote Babe, the talking pig movie. He wrote and produced Babe. And he directed Babe 2, Pig in the Big City. And he wrote and directed the Happy Feet movies.
Oh my God, I love that. That's like my
childhood. So again, not a pretentious director, and he's kind of all over the place. Like, he'll do something really intense and brutal like Mad Max, but then he'll do like a cartoon kids movie with dancing penguins. So, and I don't know if you ever saw the Twilight Zone movie from the 80s, but
the one where people died?
So he didn't... The thing about that movie is it was a different director for every segment, because it's the Twilight Zone, and it was like what's the word? Like it's a movie, but it was a bunch of like short films essentially.
Right.
So it was a different director. Like Steven Spielberg did the Kick the Can segment. Tim Burton, I think, did the Anthony segment. I might be wrong about that, but the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with John Lithgow segment at the end of the film was George Miller.
Okay, well that's oh my God, wait, I think in the original, wasn't that William Shatner in the original one?
It was.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So in the movie, it was John Lithgow instead of William Shatner, and honestly, the Gremlin looks way scarier than the newer one. But that was George Miller doing that segment for the film. So, and that's the other thing too. He hasn't done like a ton of things. Like, he's more quality over quantity, but he's directing the new Furiosa movie, which is the man is nearly 80. It's amazing that he had the energy to do this. And the other thing about this film that I loved at the time is this kind of... nowadays, we're seeing kind of a good marriage between CGI and practical effects. But this, as well as like Star Wars Episode 7 and a bunch of other movies that are coming up around like 2015, 2016, there was kind of a push for some more practical effects. And the cool thing about this movie is all those stunts are real, baby. Those cars are real. They are really driving around in a desert. Those polecats that are like, picking people out of the cars, that was real. They were really driving at those speeds, and those were circus performers doing that.
Yeah, like when I was...
And George Miller was out there with them, like, on a car with a megaphone, just like directing the action driving around.
Now you swinging.
It's just amazing. I want to know what kind of energy drinks this man, because he's in his 70s. He's like nearly 80, and he's doing this sort of like intensely action, high energy stuff. It's like the man must have a direct tap into the fountain of youth, because I don't know how he's able to keep up.
Well, it's interesting you talk about those pole things. When I was in Las Vegas last month, my brother and my dad, they went to go see a show called Absinthe.
Was it Cirque du Soleil?
No, it wasn't. It was called Absinthe. It was just in a circus. It was literally like 20 people watching a show in a circus tent.
Okay.
But yeah, there was this whole scene where like whole section where 4 of these people are they're just doing those pole things, like swinging in, and they kept saying, "Oh my God, it's like in Mad Max." And at the time I was like, I don't know what this is about. And
there you go.
Now I know, but I'm like, that's impressive though. They were doing that with the cars driving. That is wild.
Another fun fact, and again, I'm pretty sure a lot of people listening already know this because there was lots of fun facts coming out when the movie came out back in 2015. But do you watch Stranger Things?
I haven't watched it since the first season.
Oh, dude, the new season, you heard about that, how Kate Bush's song has been...
Yeah, it just blew up again.
This new season's awesome. In case anyone, we don't really talk about TV on the show, but in case anyone cares about my opinion, it deserves the hype. This is the best season since the first season. But, so you've at least seen the first season. Millie Bobby Brown, when she was cast to play 11, one thing that she was really nervous about doing was shaving her head. Mm-hmm. And you listeners will find this funny, but before T had seen this movie and I was talking about like, ooh, I'm so excited we're going to review this, I sent T a gif of Charlize Theron, and you thought it was a guy.
I think I said they because I wasn't sure.
But you said you thought it was a guy. Well, anyway, so like that reminded me. So Millie Bobby Brown, when she got cast, she was really like scared of shaving her head. The producers are like, someone involved with that show showed her Furiosa in this movie and was like, that's Charlize Theron. She's an Oscar award-winning actress. She shaved her head for this movie, and doesn't she look really cool? And that apparently like convinced Millie Bobby Brown to like be okay with shaving her head for Stranger Things.
And they were like, so buck up, kid.
I mean, I'm sure they were nicer about it. She was like 10 years old or whatever, but I mean, that's cool. And I honestly think it's kind of nice. It's like, oh, here's this other like really cool woman who's like a famous actress, and she did it, and look at how awesome she looks. And so I don't know. At the time that was like going on in like what was that, 2016, 2017 when the first season came out. I thought that was really cute.
I do like that. That is great how they they kind of showed her someone to look up to be more comfortable with it.
Yes. So one thing, I guess we'll talk a little bit about the plot. We try not to make this like a political show, but one thing I thought was kind of interesting, like we try, hopefully in the future we'll be taking requests from you guys. Anyone who wants us to review something, you can always reach out to us on Twitter, or if you listen to us on YouTube or whatever, you can leave a comment. But generally we plan ahead of time these reviews, and one thing that was kind of neat about the timing of this episode, not neat in a good way unfortunately, but I mean with the whole Roe versus Wade thing, right. I thought it was kind of very
it's very fitting.
Very fitting, especially like for those, I'm assuming everyone listening has seen this film. If you haven't,
what are you waiting for? Go see it. It's on HBO Max right now.
And we always recommend you see the film before listening to the podcast. But I think this also took a lot of people by surprise who were going to see this film in 2015. But the whole plot revolves around Immortan Joe having these women he calls breeders, which, man, incels must love this movie. But like these attractive women he's set aside for his family to basically, have kids with.
Right.
And that was another quote I really like from this is "We are not things."
Yes. I love
and
that
it's like,
so much.
And it's like, again, I think a lot of people were surprised that was what the like core story was for this film, but man, does it hit different these days.
Yeah, no, it does. When they,
and that's part of the reason I was excited to hear your reaction to this, is because I was curious if you how you were going to react to that whole aspect of it.
There are many reasons why I like this movie. That is a big part of them. I loved that whole, especially right now, that whole final battle scene was so cathartic, because I feel like the movie sets up, and I forget what they're called, the main group with the water. I forget what that faction's called. But
yeah, like it's Immortan Joe and the soldiers, or like I think they call them the War Boys.
Yeah, the War Boys. Those people. From the very beginning, they were so ridiculously over obsessed with this whole war macho sort of thing that it was actually kind of hilarious. Like the spray, I never understood the spraying their mouth with spray paint. I'm like, I don't know what that does, but they like want to die for the glory. I mean, but apparently the glory only matters though if somebody else can see it, because they keep wanting people to witness them. So
maybe you didn't pick up on this, but one thing that's actually this movie, it doesn't shove anything down your throat, but it's like deceptively deep, because I don't know if you picked up on this. All the War Boys are diseased. They aren't going to live very long. So he's like promised them that they'll have an afterlife if they serve him. They believe like they're going to go to Valhalla and they'll be like remembered forever and stuff. So it even kind of like outside of like the Roe versus Wade stuff, like it really kind of tapped into how dictators get a following. You're a nobody, but if you follow me, like you'll live forever.
Or how religious cults work. That's basically how religious cults work. There's that.
Well, and that's a cool thing too, is one of the characters starts out as a war boy, and by the end of the film, he's like one of the most likable characters.
He becomes
and you see how he's been manipulated by these people into thinking that like he's doing the right thing.
He achieves divinity. I love.
Witness me.
Yeah, I know, but he says it to himself. He doesn't say it to like relate to anybody else. I loved that. Was such a. I mean, of course, I was I wanted him and the redhead girl. I'm like, I wanted them to get together because that's me. But I feel like his death, it was so good because he achieves, I think, what he was looking for, which is a purpose in life. He also. I'm trying. Hold on, I just lost my train of thought. But basically, I like how that goes, because he's doing it for himself, not for anybody. He's doing it because it's the right thing, or what the perceived right thing to do is, or what he thinks is the right thing to do, not because he's been promised some afterlife somewhere. I love that, but like I was saying, like you said, it's deceptively deep. It has commentary on essentially religious cults, programming, a lot of, and I think, because I do remember there was a lot of people that did have a problem with it, and I think this is why it has a lot of commentary on toxic masculinity.
I think that's pretty. And I mean, hey, Max is a pretty badass masculine guy, but he doesn't feel like he needs to throw it around.
Right.
He's just kicking ass because that's what he does. Like, he doesn't need to, live immortal on the Fury Road. I hate that.
And I know this is basically how you describe all the other movies. You said, basically Max is not the main character really in any of the movies except the first one. But I think
he's helping out.
I think in this movie, it achieves another level. Because essentially Max in this movie is, basically a glorified henchman. He's not the one with the cause. He's not the one with the plan. He's not the one he's basically doing what they tell him to. Sometimes he comes up with his own ideas and stuff, but for the most part, he's there to provide assistance when asked. And
pretty much.
And in this sort, like, you said it's in most movies, that's pretty much how it is. But in this one, I feel like that has a bigger impact and meaning here. Because he is
Yes.
being led by this group of women essentially, and I thought that was pretty awesome too. I mean, like, I essentially, I mean, this is kind of off, might be left field, but like if you think about like Barbie and Ken is essentially nothing more than a glorified fashion accessory, and that's kind of what he is here. He's just basically a glorified henchman. He's not the purpose. He's not the story. He's just there.
Yeah, and that's like as I said, he for at least half the movie, any opportunity he has, he's trying to just leave everybody and go off. But pretty much when it becomes apparent that he'll need to work with these girls to like get out of there, that's when it's like, okay, this is your rig. You know the kill switch is whatever. I'm gonna get rid of. If anyone's tailing us, I'll shoot them. But you're the boss. You know how to drive this thing. Like,
Yeah.
let me know what I can do to help. And that is kind of, again, Road Warrior is the one that was like the most famous before this movie came out. And the setup is very similar. It's Max stumbles upon this like encampment that's very like well secure and stuff, and they're being attacked by a warlord called Lord Humongous, and it's because they have gas.
Yeah.
And pretty much like Max is like, hey, I can drive that tanker out of here. We can like, so it's like a similar sort of thing where it's like he goes in to someone else's problem. Like he shows up, there's something going on, and he's like, hey, I can help out, and then he helps out. Like, he's never really like the main focal point of the story. He's just sort of the vessel to get you in, and he is the character. Again, like I compare him to Indiana Jones, because Indiana Jones, it's like the story is kind of about him, but it's like there's something else going on that Indy's sort of investigating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and again, like with those movies, you could watch them out of order anyway, because it's like, okay, he's getting this artifact in this movie, and it's a whole new cast of characters and stuff. It's the same thing with Max. He's an
Right.
archetype. He's the dude with a cool car and a leather jacket and a sawed-off shotgun, and he's in this situation, and he's going to kick ass.
And he cares, and he cares about fashion. That's my jacket.
Right? Well, and that's so like a lot of people called this a soft reboot when it came out. There was a lot of big things that they changed. The biggest one being Mel Gibson used to be Mad Max.
My
which-
mom said, she's like, because at first I thought this was Gerard Butler, because he kind of looked like that. He kind of looked like that a little bit at the beginning when he had the cage on his face, and then she's like, no, that's Tom Hardy. It used to be Mel.
Yeah.
She was like, he used to be Mel Gibson, before he went, crazy.
I mean, there's an argument to be made that he was always crazy. But yeah, that was kind of a big thing. The other thing that, I mean, at the time, I don't think, now this is sort of the definitive Mad Max movie, so I don't think it gets talked about as much as when it first came out. But the other thing is that car he's driving at the beginning of the movie is his car. It is sort of an iconic thing in all of the previous movies, and they destroy it at the beginning of this movie. And I felt like that was kind of a, this is not your granddad's Mad Max.
Right.
Shit's gonna get crazy. Like, we are going to destroy his car. He will never drive his car except for the opening of this movie. Like, forget everything you know. Like, and that to me was kind of the big thing, besides it being a different actor, that like this is the starting point. Like, and that's, again, this is my favorite Mad Max film. This is the first time I've really gotten into it, and a big part of that is I think this is what was in George Miller's head in the 70s. He just didn't have enough money to make it happen.
Right.
You know?
Because these action sequences in it are so perfect. And one of the big things I love about these, because I haven't really been a big fan of the action genre, because to me, a lot of it, I'm like, I can't tell what's happening like half the time. And this, you can see everything happening. Everything makes sense. You know what's going on. You know who's shooting, who's getting shot, who's driving the car, which cars. You can see all the stuff, and it's not just like a bunch of just quick cuts, and you're like, well, what just happened here?
No, it's really well done. And I mean, This one, I forget what won best cinematography that year, but that was, I think this was kind of my pick because it was so well shot. And
Wasn't this Spotlight's year?
it was. So Spotlight won Best Picture, which I'm cool with. It was a good movie. I know it was your favorite film of that year. But yeah, cinematography, I'd have to look it up.
I
It
feel
was
like if I had
probably,
seen Mad Max Fury Road, I probably would have picked that for best. Let's see. Alejandro Inarritu won for directing, actor, spotlight. That was the Leonardo DiCaprio like sympathy Oscar year. Uh,
oh, yes.
he,
Now I
I'm
remembered.
sorry,
Yeah, dang, this was, man,
I did not think he deserved the Oscar for that.
my opinion has changed a lot in 7 years. I remember this was the one, the Revenant, I was really into, which I still think was great. I think that won best cinematography, and deservedly. It was also really well shot. It's just funny, and we've talked about this on some of our other films, like for instance the like Orson Welles versus the Best Picture. It's interesting how like time changes your opinion on things. Like something that's like, oh, this is easily the best film of the year, and it's like 10 years later, you're like, eh, this other one kind of has more staying power. More
Yeah,
people are talking about this one 10 years later. And it's kind of the same thing with this. I feel like out of all of the nominations in every category that year, this one is still the most relevant today as
yeah.
far as what people want to watch and what people talk about. No one, Spotlight was a great film. The Big Short was a great film. Revenant was a good film. But I don't think anyone genuinely like cares about them as much as people still care about this film. And I
Right.
feel like that's kind of an example of that. It's like what you think at the time, wait a few years because your opinion might change. And I loved this when it came out, but every time I rewatch it I'm just like, man, this is a good movie.
See, and I think I don't know if I've ever pitched my Oscars reboot idea for you, but I've had this thought where people should only the Oscars should be what came out 5 years ago, and then that
I feel
way
like you might have talked about that, but that is a good idea. Well, and
because
that's almost how the Grammys works because every year they nominate everything. It's like the albums came out ages ago,
yeah,
like often over a year after they've been or before they've been nominated or whatever. Like it's been ages since all the music's come out, and part of that is because they want to give the voters or whatever time to listen to all the music. But it almost kind of would be a good idea to do
well
that with
because
the movies
then you lose all this buzz of what was new,
well, and
what
also
was
the Oscars is a glorified advertisement. That's
I
something that
mean,
people don't really
yeah,
realize today, like because that was what it was for when they created the Academy Awards in like the 30s. It was to get people to see the movies.
yeah.
It wasn't, and that's what's kind of funny about people who take the Oscars really seriously. It's like it's just to sell you something. Like it's just to get you to see these movies. Like Best Picture, the whole point of that award is like who marketed their movie the best or
Yeah.
whatever. Technically it should be going to the one who was the highest grossing film of the year. So like yeah, honestly, I think if they cared about the quality of the films, I think what you are suggesting would be what they do.
Yeah.
But
I
really,
mean,
it's mostly to get people to go see the movies.
I
Like
mean,
that's
yeah,
why
because
Oscar season.
like I know you're not like Catholic, like I am. Spoiler alert. But like when they canonize a saint, which means to make them an official saint, they
Yeah,
have to wait like 10 or 15, I think it's 10 or 15 years after they die before they're even considered for sainthood. That way, for the same reason, all the buzz and everything dies down, and then it can basically just be based on the facts. Did they perform a miracle? Did they do this? Did they do that? And that's kind of how I think, like, if the Academy Awards wanted to be a serious award show about specifically awarding what they consider the best, they should have like a waiting period like that.
it's kind of one of the favorite things I like to talk about with Oscars throughout the years is like what should have won because there's so many like years where it's like I think one that comes up a lot is 1967 like there the best picture nominees. I feel like most people nowadays would say that The Graduate should have won best picture. or like any, in the Heat of the Night was the winner, and it's a good movie. I watched it out of curiosity after knowing that it won, and it's pretty good. But it's like, The Graduate also came out that year. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner came out that it was also nominated. And it's just interesting. Like, there's a bunch of years like that where it's like, really, was that the one that should have won? Because out of the nominees for Best Picture that year, part of the reason I think it should have gone to The Graduate is out of the movies, it's like the one that is referenced the most. It's the one that people have heard of out of the 5 nominees, most likely.
Well, I mean, but careful, because if that was the case, Mean Girls would have won Best Picture one year. I mean, In the Heat of the Night went on to what is it called? They spawned a very successful hour-long weekly drama that went on for 8 years.
It's a good show.
It went on for 8 years with members of the original cast. So I still think out of the 3, In the Heat of the Night is the best.
It's a good movie. It definitely was deserving of the award. It's just kind of, as I said, like, as an example of like waiting a period of time. Out of the 5 nominations from that year, again, The Graduate's the one most people bring up because it's the one that is referenced a lot and stuff. Although In the Heat of the Night, like, for anyone who was wondering what was being referenced in The Lion King, where they call me Mr. Pig, it's like, that's In the Heat of the Night, and the TV show that T was talking about. But in, like, sort of a segue, but like, as far as the awards that this film won, it won costume and makeup and everything like that. And one thing I thought was really cool was how, because Immortan Joe's the main bad guy, but we also see like the warlords from Gastown and the Bullet Farm. And I love how distinctive they made them look. Immortan Joe's got this kind of like techno Viking thing going on. He's got his gas mask and whatever, his powder he has on. But I love like the guy from Gastown. He's got like a fake nose. And I should have watched this in preparation for this review, but I remember watching a behind the scenes thing where there was some sort of like backstory, like he's got a fake nose because it was like, apparently he really is a cannibal. Like, he actually does eat people, so calling him a people eater is like a real thing. But like, he was very distinctive. He kind of looked almost like a cartoon billionaire or something.
Yeah. And I love that he was the one that was running the books at some point in the movie. We've gone through X motorcycles, X amount of guzzling. I'm like, you look like that would be important to you.
Exactly. And then the guy from the Bullet Farm, I love how he had one of those like judge's wigs like you'd see in the UK, but it's made out of bullets. And at one point he takes out one of his teeth and it's a bullet. Yeah. It's like, this is what makes Mad Max cool, and this is why I like think this is the best movie, because again, I think he wanted this to be how all the other movies were, but he didn't have the budget to make it as crazy as this. Right. Because it's like, that is such good characterization. It's like, he's the leader of the Bullet Farm, so of course he would wear bullets. Like, he'd have a bullet wig and he'd have bullets for teeth. And it's like, just and not just that, but like their war parties and stuff had kind of distinctive looks to them. Yeah, things like that.
Oh yeah, they did.
So much care and attention was put into that. Like, you could tell which gang was who by like what they looked like and what types of cars they were driving and things like that.
Well, my only question about that though is, why did these other 2 factions, why were they so invested in this guy getting his wives back? Like,
the way I saw it was that they were symbiotic. One had all the gas, one had all the bullets, and one had all the water.
Oh, so if they didn't
help probably
them,
the food, like that was the thing about Immortan Joe's little thing, is that he had water and it was green at the top. So that's the way I saw it anyway. Like, he gets bullets and gas from them, but they get food and water from him.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But they did not like it though. Like, even the fat guy from from Gastown, he's just like, no, maybe it was the Bullet Farm. One of them was like, all of this for a family squabble.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It was like, dude, just let it go. There's other women back at your place.
Here's a fun question, T. If we were war boys, who would be driving and who would be throwing the javelin?
Oh my god. Okay. Well, considering it's an open road, I don't know. See, you're more of a careful driver. I'm still learning. I'm still not. I mean, I know how to drive. I mean, I'm still feeling comfortable driving in lanes.
The it's tough because I've got more driving experience, so like you would think that that would be an obvious, oh, I'm going to be the driver, but I
Oh,
feel like between the two of us, I'm also possibly more athletic.
oh my
Yeah, and I'm also
god.
taller than you, so like that's the thing is like
Okay,
I've never had you drive me around, but the fact that it is an open road, it's like
basically, I
I don't
should have
know.
head straight. That's all I need. Okay, I can do that, and I
I
can
think
floor it.
if it's a manual, I think both of us are screwed though,
Yeah,
because I
that is true. No, yeah, I can't do manual. See, I like if you had said which one of us is on one of those swingy, you know, uh,
oh, I'm afraid of heights. You can be a
I'll I'll,
polecat all you
I'll do
want.
I'll be the pole person because that was cool. I like how they would just swing and throw something and swing back out. But I want to be a polecat for the good people.
But yeah. Oh, another thing I was gonna bring up, and this again kind of goes into what I keep saying about this movie, how this one feels like how he always envisioned Mad Max, is that when you think of like a post-apocalyptic, super, drab kind of like, oh, everything's dead, you would imagine this film would just be brown.
Yeah, and I'm
But
so
no,
yeah,
there's so much color, and to the point where I even love it how it's all blue, but then there'll be like that flame, and all around their face it's like yellow. It almost
I
looks like it's been carefully penciled in, and that's part of the reason I chose the Tequila Sunrise. Is it's like I think of like in the first act, just that sandstorm and all the reds and yellows.
that was such a
Oh,
great sequence.
it's
And
just
and, and one of the things I loved about this, I was settling myself in to watch another one of these dumbass like war films where they put like brown sepia across everything and call it art, and I'm so glad they didn't do that. Uh, you know what I'm talking about? This I don't know. This is like a thing. I don't know who somebody started this trend. I don't know who it is, but like
it was probably Saving Private
yeah,
Ryan, to be honest. That one's pretty color
but
desaturated.
and it's like everything's in him, and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, it's like paint me a picture, and you
Well,
choose
what
to
it
use the
is,
boringest colors ever. And so I was so
what it
happy they
is,
made this post-apocalyptic wasteland a bright and vibrant looking place.
well, what it is someone making a creative decision and then everyone ripping it off because like Saving Private Ryan was like a big film when it came out, and then every war film after that was like, oh, we need to make it look sepia toned, and again, it was like a creative decision by Spielberg because it's like, oh, this is like a World War II movie. We need like to make it look kind of old.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense when he does it, but then when every freaking war movie afterwards, like everything, like Jarhead or like whatever war movie that came after, like yeah, they would just make it like very brown and boring looking, and and yeah, like it's just this this is
you're
another one of those
making a
movies
big
where
budget movie. At least put some effort into it.
exactly. Well, it's just like this. We've talked about this on the show before, where it's like movies you should watch to learn how to do things. This is a perfect example where, like, I feel like if you were reading the script for this movie, it would probably not necessarily like if you have an active imagination, it would look really cool in your head. But 50% of the script was just probably describing like driving stunts and stuff like that. So like the way like you would take it from the page and make it so visually striking and to the point where it's not boring. I'm guessing you'll probably go back and watch some of the older Mad Max films because you liked this, and I can guarantee they are good. It's just the difference is like the money put into it.
Yeah.
But I like when you see Road Warrior, I will say like pay attention to the car chase finale in that film and like compare it to this because it's not poorly done, but it's like the difference in visual imagination is so vast that it's like that is particularly why like I love this particular Mad Max,
Right.
but I just can never get into the series. And who knows, maybe Thunderdome is amazing and I just haven't seen it yet, but at least with the first two Mad Max films, that was always my issue is just like the costume design was cool and the world was just as interesting, but it was just he didn't have the funds that he was given in this, which is honestly kind of impressive because the thing about the old Mad Max films is they were massively popular at the box office, just like this one, but for
But I'm like, so
way cheaper.
why? I don't understand why they never gave him a budget for it then, if he could make it better. Like the first
So
one,
they
I
did
get because it was totally independent, but then they gave him shoestring budgets for the other ones too.
They gave him slightly more budgets. It also, like, the first two were like an Australian company making it. I think Time Warner, like I think Warner Brothers was able to release the film in the States, but the first two Mad Max films were like some Australian like production company. And the second one, like the first one was like no money, the second one was a little bit of money. By the third one, which was like the late 80s, I think that one was like produced by Warner Brothers, or at least like in a Warner Brothers adjacent company like New Line or something like that. And that's when you get Tina Turner as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like the setup for that one, it's called Beyond Thunderdome, and the idea is that Max gets captured and thrown into like a coliseum called Thunderdome, and it's like, you know, he's essentially like a gladiator trying to survive, and Tina Turner's like
that.
So that's the setup for that one.
That sounds like post-apocalyptic roller derby. Thunderdome. That's what I think.
It's funny you say that. I was kind of thinking the same thing before I knew like it was like a gladiator thing. But yeah, like so that one there was a budget because you got like a big star being the villain, and you had like the, you know, they had to build like this coliseum sort of thing for him to compete in. So it was like every Mad Max it would get a little bit more expensive to make.
Oh my god. I'm sorry, I'm still just basking in this movie. I was very excited about it. You know me, I love steelbooks. The first thing I did afterwards, I hopped on eBay to try to find a steelbook of it.
You know, I was thinking of this like literally minutes before we set up to record and stuff, but one thing I've kind of noticed about like big Oscar winners is they get very cheap. I don't know, I'm guessing you found a steelbook, but it's like this is one movie whenever I'm at like Target or Best Buy or something, like you'll be able to find Fury Road for like $10 for like a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
You know,
well, because basically,
just,
when it becomes a big Oscar film, it becomes so oversaturated with releases that it just becomes cheap because they have a bunch of backstock.
it's cool though. I kind of like that because it's like, oh, cool.
It makes it
like,
accessible, and I
exactly.
That's one of my big thing. Even though I do collect Criterion, one of my issues with Criterion is it's very inaccessible for most people.
The thing about Criterion is at least they give you stuff like my Criterion for like Night of the Hunter and stuff, like I've got like 2 essays along with it that I could read. It's got like a whole other disc of bonus material including like documentaries and stuff, which is pretty impressive considering it was a film that bombed in the 50s. So there's obvious, you know, like, so at least Criterion, they do put an effort in to make it worth paying like $50 or whatever it is, because they actually like give you a lot of extra crap with it. That's something I actually have noticed. I was watching I was rewatching Dune on Blu-ray, and it's like, what happened to people giving a crap about bonus material?
I mean,
because all of the like behind the scenes stuff is just like people in chairs talking about how amazing the movie is, and it's like, did you not film anything? Can I see someone working on the thing you're talking about? No. You know, it's going back to like my collection. It's funny. Some of my more prized Blu-rays are ones where I know the bonus features are worth it. Like for instance, my Who Framed Roger Rabbit 25th edition or 20th anniversary or whatever. It's got all of the Roger Rabbit shorts. It's got tons of raw footage of like before it was edited together, like with the painted on special effects and stuff. It's like just hours of extra stuff to look at.
I mean, with my collection, I think it's the same way. I have, of course, my prized pieces. I have a 70th and 75th anniversary editions of Gone with the Wind, and they come in this big box, and it has like 9 discs of just extra stuff. And it's pretty awesome because one of them is a full-length, like 2-hour documentary about how they made the movie, and then there's another one that has a movie called The Scarlett O'Hara Wars, which is a TV movie all about how they cast the role of Scarlett. So I totally get what you mean about, you know, making it worthwhile.
it's almost worth waiting for the steelbook or like a super special edition or something, because it's like if you get it right when it comes out, I feel like there's no effort put in anymore. Like the holy grail, like I talked, the same way there's like the platinum action movies or the platinum horror movies, as far as like owning a film on Blu-ray or whatever, like there's the platinum quality ones. I would put the top, like the Lord of the Rings extended edition. That is how you should put out like a loving, release of a film. Because not only is there like an extended cut of the film, but that had, I'm sure you've seen it, like there's so much behind the scenes stuff. Like it goes into the Foley and it goes into all these funny stories about how like Viggo Mortensen broke his toe kicking one of the orc heads and stuff like that. Like all sorts of like crazy stuff. And that I feel like is like the top tier. That's what you should hope for when you're getting like bonus material on a Blu-ray. But I feel like you just never get anything. Another one, a few years ago, like when Parasite won Best Picture, I made sure to get a copy of it because I enjoyed the film. And I'm I'm buying it anyway, but when I'm looking at the back, it's like special features include English subtitles. It's like
it's like that's the special feature.
It's like, did you guys even care? Like, you don't have anything. You don't have an interview with the director. You don't have anything on this film that won Best Picture. Are you joking? Like, and I'm sure there's probably like a collector's edition now or something. It's a shame that like, I remember when DVDs came out, that was kind of one of the big selling points, is like there's all this extra crap in it. Like, I don't know if you remember getting like Harry Potter on DVD when you were a kid.
Yes.
But there was like a virtual tour of Hogwarts.
Yeah,
like,
oh my God, I remember that. I think well, that was also like, back when they made like actual like DVD books, and it was like,
it's like, where is that? No one cares anymore. And I guess it's because most people buy stuff digitally or just stream it. But it's like, especially if you want to incentivize people to buy a Blu-ray instead of just watching on an HBO Max or something, it's like, shouldn't you be putting in an effort to get people to want to buy it? Like, not just for the movie. Obviously, it's worth it for the movie, but anyway, side rant over. I was just curious what you thought. Because I feel like
I don't know if you know this, but like when I buy, like even when I buy just a movie that I get very excited about, I always want to get it like right away, because they do like a limited run at the very beginning when it first comes out, where it has a paper slipcase, and I really like that. But it's like once that like first month is over, they don't do it anymore, and it's just like whatever they can print out. So it's again, it's like there's no effort put in.
It's hopefully that changes in the future. Again, it's like probably not, because it seems like we're leaning towards everyone's just gonna have streaming services and that's how you watch movies.
Yeah.
Personally, in case something happens with my internet, I like to have a physical copy because it's nice to just be able to.
That's how I am, because my dad's always like, well, everything's available online. I'm like, no, it's not. And my other problem is right now with streaming becoming a thing, essentially all these properties are going to end up being hid behind paywalls and become inaccessible.
Well, and fun fact too, if you for instance buy a digital copy of this film on Amazon, you do not own the movie. You own a license to the movie. So if for any reason Amazon decides they don't want to carry it anymore, they do not give a crap that you paid $10 or $20 or however much it was at the time to buy the movie. It'll be gone.
Yeah.
And you will have no, like, if you buy a physical Blu-ray of the film, no one can do shit about it.
Right.
Like, as long as you have a device that can play a Blu-ray, you are good.
Until the Blu-ray degrades, which will be after you're dead, you own it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for making sure that I go out and purchase physical copies of things. Because I like to be able... I know people are like, oh, streaming is like all about... you can watch stuff when you want. No, you can't. You can watch stuff when they decide it's convenient or cost effective for them to show it. So
exactly.
That's why, like, I even like anytime there's Amazon Prime Day, I always buy a whole bunch of like DVD box sets of series that I like, because at some point, either it'll be behind a paywall at one of these things that I can't afford, or they just decide we don't need to stream it right now, and then you can't watch it like ever. So that's my rant
Just
about
like
why owning physical media is important.
just like the green place with the many money mothers, one
Yes.
day all the water will go bad and dry up.
Exactly. Exactly.
The Blu-ray well will dry up. Well, man, this has been a great episode. I'm very happy you liked it.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through some of my another fun, just some of the quotes I wrote down that I liked. Hope is not a mistake. I really liked that one, especially in these days. That's like a very nice sentiment. That's hard to. Oh, and again, like going back to not to make this the political show, but going back to the whole thing with Roe v. Wade, I thought it was very telling and interesting, and again, very important nowadays. When Immortan Joe, like one of his wives is like blocking him from taking a shot, and it's the pregnant one. He says, "That's my child. It's my property."
Oh God, that was such a cringy line. I'm so glad. That
No, but it's a good line.
I mean, it was good. It shows
how he.
Yeah, no, I mean,
well, it shows how he sees these people. It's like these are, especially talking about objectifying women. It's like they are his his child is his property. This woman is his property. It's like, again, it's a lot of it was talked about at the time when this came out. Again, it's kind of it's part of the reason I was really surprised you didn't see this when it came out. Is a lot of people who'd never seen a Mad Max film were kind of raving at the time about like, wow, I went to see Mad Max Fury Road and wasn't expecting a feminist masterpiece.
I remember there being all these all these for lack of a better term incels upset about it, and I remember reading online, oh my God, it would have been good if they didn't have this feminist thing. And I'm like, to me, I don't know what they're talking about, because the feminist, it never got in the way of the story. Do you know what I mean?
Well, also, no one cares what they're talking, because again, this movie did gangbusters.
Right,
are you kidding
right.
me? It did super well. This was most people's favorite movie that year. So, and this was kind of, now you see it with like people complaining, like the most recent one was like the Buzz Lightyear movie, or like, oh, it's gone woke. And it's like, I don't know. I guess maybe I was not as on the internet as I am now.
Well, I will say,
I heard no one complaining about this movie when it came out. I just heard a lot of people being really surprised, because a lot of people saw this and had never seen a Mad Max film, and they were just like, whoa, I was not expecting this. Like I was expecting this to be like a dumb movie that my friend dragged me to. I was not expecting this to be like a feminist treatise on toxic masculinity or what, and again, it doesn't shove it down your throat. If you just want to see a cool car chase for 2 hours with some really gnarly costumes and some real badass action, you get that. But if you want some social commentary and stuff, you get that too.
Well, no, that's exactly what I'm saying, because there's lots of socially conscious movies.
Yes.
But to me, a lot of times in those cases, it kind of gets in the way of the actual story of it. And this is not one where that happened. And that's one of the reasons why I think this is almost a perfect movie, because it still does exactly what all those other movies do without it being, like flag waving every 3 seconds.
Well, and that's kind of the thing too. Like I was kind of making fun at these people who talk about like movies being too woke and stuff, and they are funny, they are clowns, don't get me wrong, but one thing I do think they do make a good point is that no one likes being lectured to. And I don't know if it's just the people writing these films just care more about the message than the medium, but like I do feel like there are a lot of things where it's so preachy that it kind of alienates people. And, as I said, no one likes being lectured to. Like, there's that old phrase, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you make a good movie and have a message in the movie, more people are inclined to listen to your message than if you put the message first and then think about the movie as like an afterthought.
Right.
And again, it's like this is a very like, important movie as far as like things going on in the world right now with women's health and women's bodies. But you can sit down and just watch this and enjoy yourself. Like you don't need to get and I think that's kind of something a lot of people who are trying to get a political message across in films maybe could learn from this movie is like, make a movie people want to see, and then slip your message in.
Yeah,
they'll listen.
Yeah,
you just need to get their attention first. You got to realize, like, it frustrates a lot of like politically active people, but your average moviegoer, especially, they don't give a shit. They're just going to see a movie. A lot of people do give a shit, but it's like, again, if you want to make a difference, it's like it's better to put the storytelling first. At least that's my opinion. I feel like this is a perfect example of that, because this is a very, I'm sure this would piss off a lot of incel MGTOW red pill types, but it's also just a fucking good movie.
And yeah, it is a fabulous movie. It is fabulous.
Awesome. So I know I say there's no such thing as a perfect movie, but going against my own, and maybe it's the tequila, but I'm giving this 4 glasses of whiskey out of 4. This is like perfection. This is like as close to perfect as you're gonna get with any kind of movie, let alone an action movie. As I said, it's like platinum tier. It's a classic. I think in 10 more years, people are still gonna, be listing this. I'm curious to see how the Furiosa prequel is gonna be.
I am going to also go out and say 4 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea. I am also going to put this in the classic category. And of course,
this is one of T's new all-time favorite movies.
Right? It's
up there with Gone with the Wind.
Right? I'm putting it in that little thing. Well, I drew some parallels because like this movie, one of the main themes in Gone with the Wind is survival. And
good point.
Seriously, did you not watch the movie with me? It's pretty obvious. That's what the main theme in the movie
No,
is.
I said good point.
Oh, okay. I thought you said what? See, it's the tequila.
No, I said good point.
It's the tequila again. But yeah, I'm putting that in kind of the classics category as well. This is
the part of the magic of doing the show is like, if this is the first episode any of you guys are listening to, we don't talk. We do not talk about the movie until we sit down to record. So I had no idea you were going to like it as much as you did. So I'm just very pleased, because for all I knew, you'd be like, well, I liked the message, but I just wasn't a fan of the violence.
Well, see, I was actually...
It's like, I don't know, for all I know. I had a feeling you would like this, but I did not expect you to not just like it, but again, this is like now one of your
rave about
movies. Yeah. I think this is the first time you've ever, like, besides it being a movie that you have, like, pitched for the show, I think this is the most you've ever liked a movie on the show so far. So was not expecting that.
I was actually we talked about the violence. That's one thing. To me, it wasn't super violent. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird now and I watch too many true crime documentaries. But to me, one of the things that I really, really liked about this movie, it was a stellar action film with light violence and little to no profanity. So I was kind of like, why is this R?
Yeah, I actually, so again, another time I paused this while rewatching it for the show, I actually checked, because I was like halfway through the film and I was like, is this R? The other Mad Maxes are R. Is this one R? And I looked and I was like, yeah. By the end of the film, it made more sense, because like when Immortan Joe's face mask gets ripped out and stuff like that, it's like, okay, there it is. There's the
maybe
I
that's
like,
the scene that did it. But to me, that was still far enough away where I was like, eh.
Well, also there was a little, it's far away, but there is full frontal nudity with the woman who's like, oh, help me, and she's bait. You don't completely see everything.
Yeah.
But, there is. We've talked about how the MPAA really doesn't like sex and nudity, so that was, for me, I think, part of it. And then there was that.
See, I thought George just slipped the MPAA like $20. Make it R for me, please.
There's also some gross stuff. Like, I think stuff like the mother's milk, I think that happened to go into the R rating. Like, oh, there's these obese women who might have been past breeders or whatever that are being milked like cattle, and
yeah, but everything's covered.
Joe's like kids are drinking it and stuff. It's like I could see maybe they're like, oh, that's kind of gross. Also, like, but yeah, no, the violence. Oh, and there's also the bit where Immortan Joe tries to save his son by cutting it out of the girl. And it's like, you don't see a lot of gore, but that is pretty, like, you hear a lot of sound effects and stuff. I'm with you. I think it's toned down a lot, but
to me this was a PG-13 movie.
For the most part, yes. This is one, there were like, when I was a kid, there were some R-rated movies my parents let me watch because it's like, oh, it's not that bad. Like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, for instance, which is still rated R for some reason. Although, I mean, I guess I kind of get it. Anyway, but this is one where if I'm ever a parent, it's like, oh, can we see Mad Max Fury Road? Yeah, sure.
You can
It's
watch
not that bad.
It's not that
bad.
yeah, but it was fabulous. Everybody go out and watch this right now. Get fired up to this will get you fired up to vote.
I assume all of you listening have already seen this, but if for some reason you are listening to our podcast and have never heard of this movie, go get your butts to, if you can, if there is a theater screening this film, go see it, because I saw it in theaters, and when this came out also, this came out in 40X as well, so you could have gone to the theater with the moving seats, so during the car chases, your car would have been like moving around and stuff.
Oh,
I heard it was
cool.
incredible. I didn't see it myself, but a lot of people were saying like, you need to, like, 40X is stupid and it's a gimmick, but you need to see Mad Max in 40X.
I mean, to me, with this movie being basically, like he said, a giant car chase, to me, the 40X is worth it.
I really wish they would re-release it, because I never got to see it in 40X, but I would go back. I'd pay, I'm assuming it's like a $30 ticket or something, and I would do it. It looks really good. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in again. I hope you found this show entertaining and informative. And feel free to hit us up on all of our socials. As I said, we're hoping to launch an Instagram. We're thinking of getting a letterbox. We're already on Twitter. If you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment. But otherwise, we've been Whiskey and Sweet Tea, keeping it Kino.
Suck it, Scorsese.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Esparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.